Products.
23 past 10 on Melbourne's own 3AW. We were discussing earlier the idea of some sort of fine for parents that don't see that their children go to school, and there's a bit of truancy involved.
Yes. Is it fair, or should they be fined, or should they not be fined?
But to get to the seat of it, I have the Minister for Education, Mr. Martin Dixon, who rang in earlier and is going to put his side of the story. Mr. Dixon, thank you for doing this.
No worries, Bruce. Good evening.
Good evening to you. Just outline the plan involved, please.
Well, the idea is to, it'll be a last resort for that very, very small group of parents who could get their kids to school but just don't think it's okay. You just don't think it's okay for their kids to stay away from school. There are lots of parents for a whole range of reasons, just not capable of that. There might be mental health issues or whatever. We're not after those at all. What we're trying to target here is those parents that could get their kids to school but choose not to.
Yeah, it's hard to draw the line, isn't it? Because, in many cases both parents work, don't they?
Oh, that's right, and it's only, and even for those parents, it'd be a last resort. So obviously, if a kid was absent a lot, for example, every Monday or for a few weeks on end, it was a repeated pattern. That would be followed up by the school. They'd work with the parent. But if it was ascertained that the parents could get the child to school and the child was missing out very badly, which would be the case, then a fine would be considered there. So it is a last resort, but we'd always try and do the proactive stuff first, and try and work out what the problem is.
Yeah, of course, Minister, up to now I understand the police have had the powers to impose fines, but have chosen not to do so.
Well, it's actually in the legislation for these fines, but it'd have to be a court procedure, so that's unworkable, basically. So we're looking at a different type of fine. The department would actually impose the fine, not the school, because it's the school's job to actually work with the child and work with the parents as much as possible. But there would be a few occasions where we would step in and I think send a pretty powerful message that kids really need to be at school.
Some of these children are probably delinquents at heart, maybe have mental problems even.
Oh, well, that's right, and that's what you ascertain. I mean, sometimes kids wag school too. The parents might think they're at school, and they've decided to take a lot of days off, and so we're not finding children or anything like that. And you always want to get to the bottom of the story. And but if you do that and you work out that there's no reason why the child, no good reason or why the child shouldn't be at school, well then we might consider a fine, but only in those rare circumstances. But I think it sends a pretty powerful message. I used to be a school principal, so I've seen it. And I know how important it is for the kids to be at school.
Minister for Education, Mr. Martin Dixon. Mr. Dixon, do you find a different type of child or parent in 2012 as perhaps opposed to 20, 30, 40 years ago?
Oh, look, I wasn't a principal that long ago. Yes, you're right there, Phil. The kids have changed, families have changed, society's changed, and our families and the kids that actually present at school are very different to the ones 30, 40 years ago, and teachers have got a very, very different job than they did when I started my teaching career. They're far more complex.
Yes, is it tougher, or are kids more responsive?
Oh, look, it's the good and the bad. They are tougher, and in terms of there are a lot more children with social issues. The kids are really quite open and very mature compared to the ones that I taught and compared to when I was at school. And I just love being in classrooms and talking to kids these days. It'd be not bad actually being back teaching them, but the tough ones are pretty tough, and there is more of them. And I think more is expected of schools these days too, to do the things that families used to do.
I suppose teachers with the little tough ones, that it's a bit of a challenge to say, well, I'm going to win you over.
Oh, yes, and but in the end, it's amazing. It always comes down to a relationship. If even a tough child, if they've formed a good relationship with an adult, with a teacher, it's amazing what they'll do for a teacher. And it comes down to that relationship and someone for them to talk to, because they mightn't have that at home.
That's right.
You don't know the motives why these children stay away. It could, in some cases, be due to bullying, couldn't it?
Oh, that's right, and that's why you never just come straight in with a fine. You find out what the reason is, and obviously if it's bullying, well, you work on that issue. You don't fine them or fine their parents. You work on that issue.
And so, Minister, what sort of fines are we looking at here?
Oh, look, we haven't worked out that detail. It'll probably be a sliding scale, but we're coming to that sort of pointy end of designing the legislation, and so we'll announce that at some stage. But yeah, that sort of detail hasn't been announced yet.
I'm glad you rang in. Where were you on the way to when you heard that?
I was just here at up in town. I stay up in town when Parliament's sitting, because my electorate's down at the Mornington Peninsula, and one of my colleagues rang up and said, they're talking about truancy. So I thought, I'll get on and have a chat.
And you thought you'd been away from school for a while?
Yeah, that's right. No, you never escape it.
Did you in all your years ever waggon at school yourself?
I have been asked that before. I think I've left early on a couple of occasions when I was older. I always got there, but when I left was an issue on a couple of occasions, but don't tell anyone.
How is Mornington Peninsula? Beautiful part of the world down there.
Oh, I love it down there. We've been down there for over 30 years, and we live in Rye. It's just a great place to represent as well, too.
Yeah. Well, lovely chatting to you. Minister for Education, Mr. Martin Dixon, thank you so much.
Hey, pleasure.
Good on you. Goodbye.
He's a real live wire,
nice man, isn't he?
Oh, yes.
And I like the initiative of ringing in and explaining things, don't you?
Yes, very personable. Yes.
Even though he wasn't listening, he was alerted by someone else, which was a bit of a slap in the face.
Yes, and he called me Bruce.
Yes, and I got Phil too. But right after him, it's 29 past 10.